And we are back, and I'm your host for this super cool segment as we move into a discussion about the metaverse. I know you've heard about it, and we have metaverse royalty with us here today. And so, but I brought my Oculus, but someone has told me that I do not need it to understand more about what we're talking about today. Now, in 1999, yes, we were singing about, Prince's song, but at this point, this gentleman who joins us today, he founded Linden Lab and he built a virtual civilization called Second Life. And apparently you can go in there and you can create your detailed Second Life. This is an open-ended, internet-connected virtual world. Now, then in 2013, he co-founded High Fidelity, and that's a 3D audio space designed to mimic real-life experiences. And so for those of you on Clubhouse today, I think you might have this gentleman to partially thank for that. And he's here with us today to share his wisdom about all things metaverse, the one and the very only Philip Rosedale. Yay. I got it on. Welcome to downtown Detroit. I mean, if you can see behind me, I'm in a really cool office building, a space called Space Lab. A couple of architects put together. Yeah. And I'm sure it's not as cool as Second Life, but I want you to share with the viewers who were waiting for you to be here today. You're really known as a pioneer, and we have both, young people and folks who may be a little more initiated. Talk to us a little bit about just all things cryptocurrency, really for starters, and where you see where we are now and where we may be going. I know this is a big question, but I'm sure you have your take on things.
So you want to talk about cryptocurrency, kind of separate from the metaverse, or?
No. With respect to the metaverse, okay, metaverse, yeah, and obviously, we've already talked about the metaverse. I don't need to have this, and you're going to explain to me why, in fact, I can engage with the metaverse without this. But just really describe what it is for people. I mean, how do you get there? Do you have to go to the mall? Is it there? Is it, where is it? Is it on the phone?
Right. Well, first of all, right. So I think that the metaverse is one of these big words. It's got a lot of hype around it right now. Obviously, everybody wants to talk about it. I think it means two things that are important that are, at a 50,000 foot view. The first thing is taking the internet from being 2D to being 3D. And that's a big deal. We do it with computer games, but we don't really do it with the internet. We don't do it with meetings with each other. We don't do it with business conversations. We don't do it with, concerts yet. Everything's in 2D. So the first idea of the metaverse is going from 2D to 3D. But the more important thing about the metaverse, I think, is that when you use the internet today, right, you're alone. You're browsing. When you're shopping, there's nobody else there, in the store. But imagine what will change when we get to a point where almost everything we do on the internet is a live experience. When you're shopping and you turn to the left, you turn to the right, there's basically other people there, or you can hear them, which is the work we do with High Fidelity. But that idea of how we all are going to be there in spaces that are sometimes going to be public spaces like parks, or places that we can wander through. How are we going to get to a place where when we go online, we're with other people? That's the thing that interests me the most. And I think that's the big thing. That's the biggest idea that is being debated with all this metaverse stuff.
Okay. So the metaverse is a place that we can go into and occupy, and it's a digital space, right? Okay. So what do I need to get there? Do I need like a portal? What do I need?
Well, it's a little confusing because that wonderful headset you just showed, that's the Oculus Quest 2. For the last 10 years now, a lot of the technology people have been working on those devices, and they are getting better, and they are a way to go into a three-dimensional space. Obviously, if you're wearing a Quest, you can look around and, see things and see what's behind you, and walk with the joysticks, and even use your hands as virtual hands in front of yourself. But you don't actually need that to go into a virtual world. Just like you said, Lauren, that the world can be a big three-dimensional space that you can see into through your screen in the same way that you play a video game today most of the time. So you don't need anything special to get there. The question is more, how are all us entrepreneurs and big companies and whatnot going to build these sort of shared spaces? What are they going to look like? Second Life is one kind of a place. And there's a lot of wondering going on right now about what other kinds of places, are going to get built.
Okay, and so that makes me think of, to your point, what would you envision in terms of some of these purposes? Because I think what I'm hearing is the difference between an individual experience and a group experience. And,
Right.
and to your point, let's say I want to shop with friends, or let's say I want to, I don't know, I've got a basket of wine that just arrived and I want to sample with others, and we all go to this room. So,
Right.
so you access it, but then I see my children, I look over their shoulder and they're in this world, it looks like in like Fortnite or these other places, Forza or something. That's
Exactly.
metaverse stuff too, right?
It is, right? But the question is, who gets to go there now? When you're playing a game like Forza or Fortnite or Minecraft, you're in a space that there can typically only be a few other people at the same time. So we've all heard about the big music concerts that have been done a couple of times in Fortnite, but those concerts are less than 100 people together watching the performance with 10,000 other servers, basically, with a different 100 people in each one of them. So it's not the same thing as going to a stadium or even to a big nightclub or something and being able to see other people there. So that the trick, again, is making the technology work so that we can get a whole lot of people in the same space at the same time, able to see and hear each other. Let those people build avatars for themselves that are comfortable for them, and then connect those together with experiences. You were saying, what's this for? Well, why do we go to a sporting event or a music concert? Well, a lot of times it's half for the other people, right? It's fun. Maybe we go with a group of friends. More often, maybe we just wander around and are there with a couple of people, but most everybody's new to us. The opportunity here is to build technology that would allow that to actually feel good, to feel like going to an event, in the real world. And of course, with the scary possible future of COVID, we wonder if maybe we're going to have to do more of this stuff online.
Right. And you know what? For some reason, what came to me was like Art Basel, and the idea you
Right.
want to go there and you want to see the art. But to your point, during the pandemic, people were very reticent. But a way then the metaverse gives us an opportunity to maybe see the art and experience some of the fun experiential art as well that's being presented, and enjoy friends, I guess, if they
And
have
that
their avatars.
And that crosses over with cryptocurrency, like you were saying earlier. The idea of many people now using NFTs, for example, have set up little art galleries, right, that you can visit, right? But the trick is, you don't want to go to a museum. You don't want to go to a Met. I just saw a beautiful picture of the Met in New York, right? And everybody's coming back, I think, without the masks or something these last couple of days. And you don't want to go to a museum where there's nobody there. I mean, you do a little bit, but you're gonna get bored pretty quickly, right? It's important that there be other people there. And so the opportunity with the metaverse is just that. Can we build an experience just like a museum, like you said, like Art Basel, where you can wander around, and when you run by somebody that you might want to stay in touch with, you're able to get to know them a little bit, and that works. And you both the environment is appropriate so that you can't grief or troll each other either. You've got to have an environment there that makes it kind of fair, makes the rules right for people getting along in the space as well.
Okay, can you speak a little bit more about that? And maybe that application was clear and present in the Second Life. There are certain
Right.
rules to engagement, the rules of engagement.
Right. Well, now imagine for a second, Second Life is the size of Los Angeles, literally the land area of Second Life, and you can basically walk from almost anywhere to anywhere in Second Life. So imagine being able to literally, kind of in a video game environment, walk miles and miles across a space the size of Los Angeles. That's what Second Life is. So we've had a lot of years of design around how do you let people get along in a place like that, where in Second Life, everybody owns their own property. If you want to, you can own it just like in the real world. So if you're walking down the street, you're walking by a store and then somebody's house and then another store and then, some mountains, and all of that is different stuff made by different people. And so we've had to make that work so people could get along. But this problem of moderating live spaces where people are making things is a really complicated and interesting problem.
Yes, it is, because I mean, I'm running ahead and I'm listening and I'm hearing and I'm thinking that I'm in the metaverse and I see this cool street and it's got these cool, I don't know, trees, sequoia trees I like. Somebody built them in their metaverse and I want to go walk by. And so you're saying even within the metaverse, there's going to be parameters and permissions. How does that work?
Well, first of all, let me say I don't think anybody knows quite yet. This is one of the things that hasn't been built, and maybe the people that are listening, this is one of the opportunities is to figure out how to make the rules work in a live environment. But we have done a bunch of work on it in Second Life, and like you said, there are things like the people that are the local people that live in a place have a good degree of control over it. So you can, say whether somebody can come into your house, for example. And it's you that gets to decide that not the publisher of the environment, not Linden Lab. In the case of Second Life, it's you, the person who is standing there and who, owns the property. But, when two people meet in a public space, like wandering in a park, like think of Central Park in the real world.
Right.
How do things work? How do we make them get along? And, mostly with technology, unfortunately, we've done the opposite. A lot of live technology mediated environments have encouraged people to fight in ways that they don't fight in the real world. So how do we fix that? How do we turn things around and create a world where when people are online, and this is entirely possible, where people are online, they get along, they get to know each other, they resolve their differences, they can have disputes. That's what we have to do.
Right. I mean, there's so much there in what you just said, and it takes us back, or takes me back to Gavin and Alexander, the two young creators of their NFT collection. And so they, of course, being young, coming out of gaming is about competition. A lot of the gaming is about who do you capture, who do you kill, and what they have said is their second iteration of what they want to do as they have their NFTs be featured in gaming. They want everyone to come together. And so, hearing you say that, because I'm wondering, what do you envision? Because that's what's important here. The purpose of the metaverse. What can our society get from the metaverse?
And another way to say it is what can the real world that is so wonderful, and is the home for all of us, what can that teach us about how to build the metaverse? Sometimes I think that technologists try things without really stopping and thinking about, well, how does this actually work? How do people really get along? I think the big word to think about is empowering the people that are interacting in these environments to have a degree of capability and agency and control over what they're doing that is enough to allow them to kind of get along together. I know it sounds funny, but the thing about Second Life is it's actually very easy to make a big mess of somebody's house in Second Life. You can pull things out of your pocket and start making copies of, furniture or whatever and mess up somebody's house. But the thing about Second Life is just like the real world, there are going to be consequences for that. You know it's not your house, and the person whose house it is going to find the stuff that you left there and know that you left it there, and they're going to come looking for you. So there is a kind of a fair tension that's established by empowering people, especially when it's empowering them to be creative, that can come out of these virtual worlds. I worry that there's a danger to virtual worlds being these kind of largely passive things where we're not empowering people to do anything there. We're just sticking them in seats at a theater and playing stuff for them to consume. And that's been a part of the problem of the internet today, is that we've been asking people to be these passive, unempowered observers of the world going by, and we've not given them the ability to kind of take control of what they're doing. And so I think this transition toward a better online future where we're all in there together is one of empowering people, maybe even more than you might think would be safe, like giving them the ability to, I call it, well, Danielle Allen, writer on this, and, I'm running for office right now and writing about democracy and race and how those interact. She calls it fair fighting, that you have to establish fair fighting. And when I think about online games, I think about that. And we've thought about it a lot. How do you enable fair fighting?
I think for all the viewers, and particularly the younger viewers who are wondering about your background and what skills do you need to be able to work in the area of building a metaverse? And I mean, how did you get started?
Well, I taught myself computer programming. Now, part of that was because I'm old enough that it was just barely a thing that you could study, when I started. But first of all, as a kid, I was just a tinkerer, and I was interested in building things, and I love to build. I love to build with wood, and I learned electronics when I was a kid. I did love Legos. We were talking about that earlier. Um, I liked building things. And then when computers came out, I taught myself how to program them, which is very doable. You don't need a degree in computer programming, not for a lot of the type of computer design work that can be done. And then in high school and later in college, I was just very entrepreneurial. I tried to figure out any way I could to sell computer software to people. I had a little computer business. I tutored kids before that. I just did everything I could do with computers. And when I got out of college, and I actually studied physics in college, so it did support my work with virtual worlds because they are simulated and there's a lot of kind of virtual physics. But it was just kind of what I was fascinated with. And then when I got out of school, the internet happened. When I got out of college, it was 1992, and about 1994 was really when we all learned about the internet and its possibilities. And so that was when I jumped in. But you know, you can come at this stuff a lot of different ways. You don't have to have a specific background. And I think that's even more and more true nowadays with all the wonderful tools there are for building software in particular.
I really appreciate the fact that you pointed that out because I do think sometimes students, for those of the students who are listening, they often think that there is a singular track, but you can have a circuitous route to arrive if you have that curiosity. So let's talk a little bit about the evolution of the metaverse because you were doing this well before it was super popular, the way it's becoming now. So I'm sure the metaverse itself has also been affected by time and ideas. And so, where were we then and where are we now?
Well, you know, the trick is still empowering us to be able to communicate well enough. Like right now, we're doing this event and we're using Zoom, we're using video. And there's a reason for that. It's still the best we've got, for standing and talking to each other. So you don't have your headset on and you're not an avatar and I'm not an avatar, not quite yet. And you actually got the device right there, so it's close by. But we're not to the point yet where we can come together, say in a classroom, with a bunch of people giving a talk, having an engaging discussion, and use avatars yet. And the reason for that is that we haven't yet figured out how to sort of transport ourselves into the bodies of avatars in a way that would the average person would be comfortable doing. So if you and I know that there's people listening here who are gamers, and of course, gaming is kind of this magic window into the future right now where you're comfortable, being an avatar. But even for the people here that play games, would you take that avatar to a live music event where you'd be running into other people for the very first time? Would you want to be your Fortnite avatar at that thing? Not quite yet.
Yeah, there's some interesting features that I see a recurring theme on some of these characters. And yeah, I don't know that people would necessarily want to walk out into real life. Um,
Right.
I hope that the young people and others really who are listening could also take from you ways that they might think differently about the metaverse. Because for some, this is just, it's a concept. And then now, of course, they know more practical ways and they know what we mean. We're talking about gaming. But let's just say you're not a gamer. Why should they care about the metaverse?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of stuff that's being talked about right now, particularly, for example, with cryptocurrency, which is the right conversation to be had. That is to say, a lot of the aspirations are correct, but we're still very early in getting to something that really works. So take cryptocurrency, which I know you've been talking about, NFTs, this idea of a new kind of money, right? We're all dreaming right now about maybe I think a lot of us are dreaming about a kind of money that might be fairer for people, for example, right? Like maybe there's a more inclusive, bigger, maybe global way of doing money differently, right? I mean, that's part of the aspirational excitement of cryptocurrency. Maybe there's a way to empower everybody a bit more equally and start over with a new money system. That's a great example of something that is, and this is the encouragement I would give to the young, especially to the people that are thinking about building things or about being entrepreneurial. That conversation has just started. We have the technology to do it. And the current versions of the stuff that we're playing with crypto aren't that. They're not there yet. They're not there. They have some of the same problems that we have with old money are there with cryptocurrency. But the thing that's so exciting right now is we've got the technology. We've got the smart people out there that are passionate about this stuff. And we have the opportunity to change the world and to build things like the metaverse and cryptocurrency systems in a way that's good for people. Not necessarily where we're headed right now, which makes it a little scary, but everything's there to do good.
Can we talk about that a little bit and just so that we're sure we're clear? I mean, what are some of the warnings, the warning signs that maybe we are not using the technology in the best way? I mean, what are some of the things that young people, because often, they are the drivers of change. And so maybe we want to help them to frame up their perceptions.
Yeah, well, let's see. There's so many great examples of that. One of them is it's a little more technical, but it's the way cryptocurrency works. As you may know, the cryptocurrency systems we have today basically say, well, we're going to do something so that the government can't print money anymore. Right. And of course, that's cool. That's a good that's a good topic to bring up, because when governments print money, the way that they give it out is often not fair, inefficient, ineffective, not good for everybody. It's just a lot of problems with it. So it's aspirationally correct to say, hey, let's come up with a new kind of money that the government can't print. Right. Cool. But the problem with that is the problem with digital money today, and this is very true with Bitcoin and Ethereum, the two big ones that we know about, is that what the first generation new idea did is even worse than what we started with, which was to say there's only going to be a fixed number of these Bitcoins ever. And we're going to give them away kind of randomly to people that were smart enough in the beginning to have big computers and put them online and win a lottery that wins some of the money. Now, you can understand where the aspiration felt good of that. It was to say, well, everybody has a computer, so everybody will be able to have a little money. But the actual way that it worked out wasn't that way at all. It's that a bunch of people that got in early now have a bunch of that money, and everybody else has almost none. And so we're potentially doing something that's even worse than what we've basically done in the real world with printing money. And so we've got to rebuild those systems. But the good news is, in the example of cryptocurrency, you can design a cryptocurrency. And of course, we all know people are doing all kinds of different experiments with coins and NFTs and all these things. You can design a currency that doesn't just give out the money at the outset to people that have fast computers, and instead does something different. And there's a bunch of experiments going on, for example, around basic income plus cryptocurrency. How would that work? So there are all kinds of really unique opportunities and projects that I'd encourage people that are listening here to think about working on. But I guess the point I'm making is, to an even greater degree than the internet, even in the late 90s, we're at a moment right now where we haven't built the right stuff yet, but at least we're having good conversations about it. And we've just got to be smart enough not to make mistakes. Like, the other big metaverse mistake is the ad business. We can't, there's a couple of companies, big tech companies that make all their money on advertising. Right. If you put advertising as the core business model of the metaverse, you are going to do harm to people that is unimaginable. We can't even go a few steps down that road because it's so dangerous. The business of advertising today on YouTube and Facebook, for example, and Instagram, is of manipulating your attention by capturing your attention through manipulating your behavior and through surveillance, through knowing what stuff you clicked on before you got to this page. If we take that into the metaverse, imagine how bad that could be. Everywhere we look, we're going to be seeing a person that's chit-chatting with us, but we don't know if they're an advertisement or not. Maybe they're just trying to sell us something.
They could be
So,
a
yeah.
robot, right? Absolutely.
So
Okay, I'm sorry.
if we go
Kurt.
down that road, it's a bad road to go down. But the good news is, and this is a story from Second Life's history, Second Life doesn't do advertising.
Okay.
It just charges you. It charges you for, and this is much like NFTs. Second Life charges you fees on transactions, and it also charges a kind of a hosting fee to the people that decide to own land in the world. It's basically like paying to run a website. You're basically paying a hosting fee. Second Life makes a ton of money. It's a good business. It makes more money per person than YouTube and Instagram, Facebook do per person for their businesses, and there's no advertising. So it's a great example of how we can do it the right way. But this is an example of where it's very dangerous right now to consider doing it the wrong way. In fact, a lot of my time is spent, as we are doing right now, just trying to bring up some of these issues for people so that they don't make the mistake of going that way.
And for clarification, because I have not enjoyed Second Life yet, when you talk about the monetization, does this have to do with created spaces that individuals are making and then they are populating this space on Second Life?
Right. Well, Second Life is literally just kind of the world's biggest Lego kit you can imagine. It's a Lego kit the size of Los Angeles, and you can walk into their yard and say hi to them, and they can say, "Hey, can you build me a plant over there?" And you can go over and start building, and they're actually watching you do it. It's a fantastic, fun, live, creative experience. So yes, you're right. It's a live world where everybody's building whatever they want, basically.
Fantastic. You know what? There's so many branches to this conversation. And I'm so appreciative, and I know Bill is as well, that you're here. We have a couple of questions, if you don't mind, if we go
Yeah.
some of the live questions coming in. One from Liberty White, and Liberty has been on with us, I would say, many hours today. And she wants to know, what does it take to create a metaverse? And they say, I've seen YouTube videos where people are building their own spaces.
So there are a bunch of different ways to do that. Of course, the different spaces that people have built have different tools to build them. There's one big space right now that does work with that headset you have, which is called VR Chat. And that's a space where you have to use a software product called Unity to build the actual space. But you can build your own space, and if you follow along on their website and you follow all the steps, somebody without computer programming skill can actually build a space for themselves. Second Life, like I said, is a live toolkit. So you actually just download Second Life, walk into the world as an avatar, just like you were in a video game, and start building. You right click on the ground and you say build, and you can put a box there and stretch it and paint it and upload a picture and put it on it, that kind of stuff. So there's different rules and building tools for the different worlds. And right now, again, we're in this early stage. There's a ton of different ones. There's another world called Rec Room right now that's popular. I'm sure a lot of people here know. Yeah, and it's a
Okay,
great one.
I'm taking notes. And so is it hard to learn to participate in Second Life? Is there, a really deep learning curve? You got to get in, and it's going to take you
I
weeks
think,
just to know how to do the
I
basics. You're going
mean,
to end up upside down with no house, or, how does it work?
you know what? The honest answer is, yeah, it's pretty hard, but it's hard in the way that you just need to be persistent, not that you need to be a computer programmer. So the good thing about Second Life is, and this is true of many of these virtual worlds, there are people there that love helping the new people that get there because it's such a difficult environment. It's sort of fun to help new people, get their sea legs in the environment. So, you can always find people to help you. But yeah, these worlds right now, metaverse worlds like Second Life, they take a good bit of work. They're complicated. But like I say, what I always say about it is, so is any, new city or new place or, jumping into a new experience. That's what it's like, jumping into a new experience. You have to be comfortable asking questions sometimes of the people that are there. It's not so much like you got to read 1,000-page book and get a, PhD in something.
Right. And I think that probably some of that learning curve is the enjoyment. People are there to be able to kind of master that. And dare I say escapism, but you can kind of escape into that second life. So here's a question that has come up more than once when we hear about the metaverse and people who are using this, and you see people with the Oculus, and to your point, they are not really in touch with the present world. And so the question often comes up, will the metaverse, is everybody just going to forget, like people's yards are going to be full of weeds, no one's cutting the grass, the roads are not getting cleared, the children need to be fed because people are in the metaverse. Do you foresee, in some world that maybe we are doing too much somewhere else and not so much in the present?
If you would have asked the 30-year-old me that started that company and started building Second Life in 1999, I would have told you that we probably were going to, for the most part, leave the world behind, that we were going to kind of go into virtual worlds and that they were a sort of a future for us. I would say now, with the benefit of all these years of looking at everything that's happened and where we are right now, I'd be a lot more cautious about that statement now. I think that there's something magic about the world that we live in and the bodies that we have here and the fact that we're really in a space with somebody else when we are. I think there's a magic to that that's going to be pretty difficult to get to with computers. I think computers create some alternatives. They allow somebody, for example, to, take on a new identity, for example, which is a very powerful, wonderful thing, to be able to reinvent yourself. But there's a liveness to the experience of being in a real room with real people that's just amazing. And I think that it's still going to take us a long time to do that. And I don't think we necessarily should. I think the real world is our home. And, if we're using metaverses to escape and let the weeds grow in the yard, like you said, then shame on us. We shouldn't do that.
Right. Just the first example that came to mind. And so I imagine, though, when you think about the senses and the way we experience the world, and we want the metaverse certainly to be what it is in terms of it being three-dimensional, where are we in terms of the technology for creating the touch and smell and things that go along with an experience?
Well, we're kind of nowhere. Touch and smell, and those are the right two to give. They're almost impossible to do unless you're talking about something like, the movie The Matrix or something. And I say that as a person with a background in physics and a pretty substantial knowledge of, neurophysiology, what's going on in the brain, how we do sense things, what it means to feel something. There's a tremendous challenge, particularly to touch. We actually worked at Linden Lab before Second Life. We worked on a very unusual kind of kinetic. We worked on a machine that could make you feel immersed in a world where we wouldn't let you move. It was almost something like right out of a movie. We'd kind of not let you move, and then we detect the forces that you tried to move when you try to move your hands or your head, and we
That's
would.
called nightmare.
It
That's
it
the
it, it
nightmare.
wasn't, but I know it does sound kind of crazy. But we did that as a way of exploring how to create the sense of movement and touch without actually moving. So it's a really hard problem. I would say that touch is especially hard, and it's really important. We've all learned this in COVID, right? We've learned that, being on the other side of the screen has a lot of problems that maybe we didn't think of before. And I think there are real challenges there. I think that's one of the reasons why I say that to be in the world with a body at a certain place and time is a very magical thing. And I respect more and more the challenge of just copying it, into a computer. I think it's really hard.
Right. And I think for me, yeah, that comes with the more we live, the more I think we respect this earthly plane, and what it
Right.
takes to kind of have our feet squarely on the ground. I want to talk briefly because when you talked about neurological impact, and that's what's happening in the metaverse. There's a lot that happens with psychedelics and things to help people in terms of modalities for therapies.
Mhm.
If there's some traumas and they're working through that, are there some applications you think for the metaverse with respect to helping people when they're having neurological issues?
Yeah, I think that there's a whole bunch of things we can do with virtual spaces and with devices like the Quest there that put us into these spaces in the way of things like PTSD recovery, for example. Like you said, hallucination, simulation of neurophysiological experiences that you really can't do in any other way. There are other verticals for virtual worlds, like medical training, for example. Building very complex systems, walking through the engine of an airplane, things like that, that are going to be very big areas of impact. And it's funny because I think those are the things that are going to happen first with all this technology, because they are more specific and they're kind of the things that are doable right now. Teaching a surgeon how to pre-op, by looking at a heart, that they're looking at in VR. That's a very powerful idea that is going to enable a lot of amazing experiences. And like you said, things like therapy, medical treatment, there's going to be a lot of things we can do with these technologies, I think, earlier than the kind of idea of, instead of going to, Italy on vacation, I went to Italy virtually. I think that's, like I was saying, that's farther out and really
Right.
hard to do because of that whole sensory experience.
Well, that takes me back to the, Bill could help me out. What's the thing we used to do? You slide the slides in there and then,
Yeah, the
yeah,
Viewmaster.
the Viewmaster. That's what, this is the Viewmaster.
It's funny you talked about what toys growing up. Everybody's got their toys from when they were growing up, but boy, did have the Viewmaster, and you took me back there. That stereo view, the Viewmaster.
I
That's
mean,
pretty close to virtual reality.
it took you right where you needed to be. When you put that thing up, I love it. I had a red one. And so, yep, I'm dating myself, but these are the facts. I thought because, my youngest son wants to be a pilot. And so he's very interested in
Wonderful.
all things aviation. So when you talk about being able to train people by using the metaverse, if you have the instructor and the student and they can occupy the same space and then see the same things, let's just, for people who are watching, who may be students and they're looking at, how do I get into this? I love it. I think I have certain skills. What would the applications be in terms of their academics? I mean, you need a designer, a video designer, or graphics, or who are these people who develop this?
Well, 3D graphics design, which is its own, specific discipline now, and there's a lot of different ways to get into it and play with it. That's a great place to start, and almost start on the content side more than on the engineering side. If you download a piece of free 3D software like Blender, for example, is this one that's very popular. If you download Blender and you build yourself a chair in 3D, and you can see it on screen and turn it around and play with it, and you learn how to use that tool, you might get hooked. It's pretty cool. And it's an experience that still a lot of people haven't had yet. And I highly recommend it. And it's like using Photoshop or something. I mean, it's a bunch of buttons and stuff to figure out, but you get through it pretty quickly, and you might really get excited. And there's a lot of coursework around that kind of graphical design, 3D design, that I think is kind of the core of a lot of this metaverse stuff. Designing things in 3D is a huge skill. And by the way, even for the people like myself who have like a software or an engineering background, if you don't learn 3D design, you're kind of, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good a programmer you are.
Okay, wow. Well, that's important. We only have 5 minutes left, and I wanted to talk because I know it sounds like you have had a lifetime of passion around so many things, and much of which has culminated in Second Life, but I'm sure there's some other things that you've worked on that we haven't talked about specifically. So what else are you working on? Can you share that? And how will you be spending your time? What sort of innovations maybe do you see coming in your future that you want to share with the world?
Well, thanks for asking. I'm at an interesting moment in my career. I've built Second Life, and then I've worked for about 10 years trying to make another thing like Second Life, but specifically for those devices, those headsets. I'm not sure whether they're going to become mainstream anytime soon. And I'm taking the moment right now, like I hope a lot of other entrepreneurs are, to think about how I could help with some of the problems that I see in the world that have been created by technology. And so, like, I'm taking a few, probably months right now, to really think hard about what's the best thing I can do to help. And I'm wondering, do I work on virtual worlds, or do I work on something more basic, like some of these aspects of cryptocurrency we talked about, or something about building trust? I use that word a lot. I think that the biggest thing that we've done with technology, and most of us didn't mean any harm. We didn't mean to do it. It was an accident. Is breaking down trust. People don't trust each other as much, and technology is partly to blame. And so right now, a lot of what I'm thinking about personally is, do I use, how can I help rebuild trust with technology? And do I use virtual worlds to do that? Or do I do something different? And I don't know. That's where I am. I'm kind of trying to decide.
Well, I mean, obviously, we appreciate your contributions thus far, and you've earned the opportunity to reflect. And what a wonderful place to be in, to be able to consider how you can use all of your skills and experience to better the situation and what you see. I was hoping that we might have more questions, and we had one question, but I felt that we already touched upon it, and that was what kind of equipment do we need? Again, that's from Liberty White, who's been with us. What kind of equipment do we need to participate in the metaverse? But I think we covered that. You just need a computer.
Just a computer, yeah. Although, as you said, those Quest devices are very interesting, and they're getting, they're pretty cheap. Facebook's selling them at a loss right now. So, if you got an extra $300, there's something interesting to play with. There's a lot of building systems that you can explore using the Quest, but you don't. Just a regular computer is actually fine for all this stuff.
Okay, well, before we wrap up, because we only have 2 minutes, would you be able to share just in general what you want to leave people with about the metaverse?
I'd go back to what I said earlier, which is the story's not done yet. If you think that something is finished, it isn't. If some big company is telling you this is the way things are going to be, it's not. They're not. We're way too early on this. And so what I would leave people with is, if you want to have a positive impact and a big impact on things, this metaverse stuff is a huge opportunity to do that. We are so at the beginning. We're the internet in the 1980s or something crazy like that. It's really early, and so you have an opportunity. If you have any interest in working on this stuff, there's just a tremendous opportunity to change the world. And like it or not, the world is going to be changed by technology going forward all the time, and we don't get away to. We have no opportunity to walk away from that. We have to move forward.
That is absolutely as it seems. Well, I want to thank you so much for talking with me. I'm somewhat uninitiated. I'm not, so much of a techie, but I think I'm pretty good at asking questions, and I'm around my children. They've kind of exposed me to things. I'm watching the Minecraft and gaming, and you see we got a couple of these around the house. So I haven't put it on yet. I got to see now, but
There you
my
go.
interest is peaked when it comes to Second Life and then enjoying. So when I'm doing less of the other domesticity, I'm going to get in there and create some details, create my little neighborhood. But thank you. And I know William was very thrilled. He was like, Lauren, you're going to be talking to the OG of the metaverse today. So I thank you. I thank you. And we are going to be moving on to talk about DAOs. And if you don't know what a DAO is, you need to stick around. A decentralized autonomous organization. What does that mean, and why should you care? Stay with us. Thank you, Philip Rosedale. We really appreciate your time. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
It's game time.
Name a city.
Brooklyn.
Name a sport. Name
Basketball. Arm.
Name a musical.
Wiz.
Name a job.
Sail.
What's your name?
Maria.
Name a crypto.
Bitcoin.
Name a dance.
Tango.
Name a flavor.
Lemon.
Name a Greek god.
Oedipus.
Name an ocean.
Pacific.
Name a fruit.
Orange.
Now dance. Name a city. Name a sport.
Chicago. Soccer.
Name a muscle.
Bicep.
Name a musical.
Rap.
Name a job.
Engineer.
What's your name?
Keely.
Name a crypto.
Ethereum.
Name a dance.
Cha-cha.
Name a flavor. Name
Cherry.
a Greek god. Name an ocean.
Atlantic.
Name a fruit.
Jackfruit.
Now dance. Name a city.
Beijing.
Name a sport.
Soccer.
Name a muscle.
Tendon.
Name a musical. Name
Sing.
a job. What's your name?
Constructor. Brittany.
Name a crypto.
Ethereum.
Name a dance. Name a
Jackie.
flavor.
Strawberry.
Name a Greek god.
Zeus.
Name an ocean.
Indian
Name
Ocean.
a fruit.
Jackfruit.
Now dance.